Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here then hi, my name is Miss Paris and on my channel you can find tips, advice and information about teaching as well as following along with my own personal journey. So if that's something that interests you then please do consider checking out some of my other videos and subscribing. Now I haven't made content for a while because as you can hear my voice is still quite deep, it's still a bit sore. I've been ill for like a week, not COVID. And so yeah, I haven't really felt like I could sit down and talk about things. But this has meant that I have had more time to talk to people on social media to see kind of what people are talking about both on Twitter and Instagram, and I have noticed this. A lot of people are talking about teacher tired, getting stressed, getting overwhelmed, and although I talk about it loads on my Instagram, so if you don't follow me on Instagram at the Petite Primary then you should. I haven't made a video about well-being and work-life balance and those kind of things on my channel for a while. So today I really wanted to come on and talk to you about self-care and self-regulating, because self-care, society has kind of created this image of self-care being candles and baths and things like that, and although those are great, it's not kind of a long-term fix and it's not like a lifestyle change. Self-care has to be something that you do, you know, every day. Throughout the week, the year, whatever. It has to be a lifestyle. And there's some kind of trends that I've noticed, such as imposter syndrome, that I really wanted to talk to you about today, so that when you feel a specific emotion, this is what you can do instead. So do stick around to the end because I will cover different scenarios. So if there's one that doesn't really relate to you at the moment, keep watching because there might be some that you'll feel in the future or you have already felt and didn't know how to cope with, or you might be feeling it right now and you would like some tips on how to manage that. So let's get started. The first one I'm going to talk about is discouragement. When you feel discouraged, you feel like everything's a lost cause or that you're never going to get on top of your achievement list, you feel discouraged because your pupils might not be making progress, you feel discouraged because your feedback from an observation wasn't what you were expecting it to be. There's loads of different times where we might feel discouraged, even just in day-to-day teaching, even when we reflect on our own practice, or you know, we look at data and results, or we see just the day in day out kind of behavior of the class, we can feel discouraged as teachers. We are only human, be this primary or secondary or further education, we can feel discouragement. And to self-regulate from discouragement, what you need to think about is really your why. And I'm not talking about why you started in the first place, why you're doing what you're doing. I'm talking about why I'm trying, why you are trying. So be kind to yourself, because what you're trying to do, you are on a journey to achieving that. It's not just enter the profession, enter the classroom, get it done, bish bash bosh, 1 week in. You know, why you are trying to do something, and be kind to yourself because you are on your way to achieving that. It might just take more time than other people that you're comparing yourself to. And use this as your strength, which is why it's so important not to, like I said, compare yourself to people. Why it's so important not to think, well, why have they achieved this and why haven't I? Because then that just reinforces the discouragement. You want to be kind to yourself, remind yourself why you are trying in the first place, like what is the reason, and then use that as your push, as your motivation. Because discouragement comes from most of the time when we don't get the results we want straight away, or when we feel like we're doing everything we can and nothing is happening the way we expect it to. So keep reminding yourself of the why you are trying, of the reasons you are trying. So like if it's about you're discouraged about pupil progress, well think, okay, the reason I'm so passionate about pupil progress is because there is a need for it, because there's like a huge gap in learning at the moment, or I have lots of children that have been disadvantaged in some way, or you know, they've been impacted by COVID, or maybe they are from like low socioeconomic statuses and you know, they just need that extra support. That is your reason, that is why you are trying, and let that be what drives your passion, what drives that motivation again. Because it's very easy to continue in our loop of discouragement and think, right, well I'm going to try hard and it still not work, so I'm more discouraged, so I'm going to try harder, so why is it still not working? Just stop thinking like that. Think, right, I'm discouraged, but these pupils need my help. I have the skills to do this, which is why I'm trying in the first place. I'm going to continue to do that until I reach those results. So rather than being like, it's not immediately working, I'm discouraged, think of it as a long-term journey and a long-term process. So the second thing I want to talk about is anger. You might feel anger for so many reasons. You might feel anger towards yourself. You might feel anger towards your colleagues, maybe senior leadership team, especially when, you know, you can see everyone's overwhelmed, everyone's complaining in the staff room, and then more is kind of put on top of your workload. It's normal to feel anger. You know, if you repress anger, then it never does any good. Or you might feel anger sometimes towards pupils, which obviously you have to repress, and that might come in different forms when you get home. So when you do feel anger, one way to self-regulate this, you just need to pause. And when you pause, I want you to think clearly about how you will respond rationally rather than reacting. Because it's so tempting, like if you are just stressed and angry and you come home and then there's like one little thing that annoys you and then it just kind of explodes sometimes. I mean, it can happen, and everyone, you know, reacts differently, but you don't want to react in an angry way. You want to just pause, you want to kind of disassociate yourself from the situation, and you just want to think about how you will respond. Because responding and reacting are completely different. Reacting sounds like it's very much on the spur of the moment thing, it's just kind of unleashed, it's just happened, whereas responding, it's normally a more logical thing, like, okay, so this is what has been said, this is what has been done, how will I respond to this? And it's like, sometimes, I've said this in previous wellbeing videos, you just need to practice your breathing yourself. Or if you see that everyone is riled up and you're getting frustrated as well, just stop everyone and then just practice some breathing techniques or some mindfulness techniques, because this allows you to just relax. And I know it's not completely related to the classroom, but you see this a lot in Super Nanny. I do love her, especially the older shows. She has previously taken parents into another room and just been like, right, calm. Just calm down, take a moment, let the tears out, just let it all come out. And then afterwards, you need to have, you know, think about an action plan of how you're going to react when you come back out. Because otherwise you can end up going like on a back and forth with your pupils. You can, you know, if they're very defiant and they just say no, you might end up just getting frustrated. So you just need to sometimes take a step back, think about how you're going to respond, pause, breathe, focus on your physical symptoms that you're feeling. You know, are you getting very hot? Are you getting flustered? And just try and work on a logical action plan on how you are going to respond. And this doesn't necessarily mean like live in the classroom. It can be when you get home, like, you know, you are angry, you can feel yourself driving home and you're angry. When you get home, think about how you're going to respond, especially if you have like a family or you've got added responsibilities. You don't want your whole evening to just be ruined by this anger that you felt a few hours ago. Okay, so just take time, think about how you're going to respond rather than react. Insecurity is the next thing I'm going to talk about. And insecurity can come in so many forms. The biggest one in teaching, especially if you're a trainee teacher or an ECT, is imposter syndrome. So a lot of people now are applying for jobs and they might feel a lot of imposter syndrome that they haven't even finished or qualified. They haven't finished their placements and they haven't even qualified yet, and yet they are trying to get a job where they're going to teach, you know, loads and loads of pupils. If you're secondary, like potentially loads of year groups, or in primary, you're going to be in charge of 30 children, 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. It's a lot to take on, and if you aren't, you know, super experienced, like you came straight out of education and then went into teacher training, and you haven't necessarily had experience in the workplace or experience as a TA or some kind of other position in education, it's really easy to feel like you are an imposter and you are just trying to fake it till you make it. And obviously this is kind of normal, like nobody can blame you for that. I was in the same position. I was kind of the first year impacted by COVID. I think March was the last time I ever saw my pupils. So March till July, I lost that in-person, hands-on experience in the classroom. And, you know, I was applying for jobs and just thinking, I'm not surprised they're not taking me on. I've lost so much experience. How can I prove to them that I am good enough? How can I prove to them, especially when I'm not interviewing with children, I'm just, you know, online Zoom, how can I prove to them that I'm good enough? And in these moments, to help you self-regulate that insecurity, you need to work on appreciating any of those flaws, because a lot of the time we will focus on those flaws. We'll be like, well, I can't do this, I won't be a good teacher because this. Okay, so fine. You know your flaws, work on appreciating them and acknowledging them, because very often, you know, schools aren't silly. They know that if you just come out of training, you're not going to be a perfect teacher. They know that there's going to be areas that you need to work on. There's even, you know, targets for your ECT years from your training years. So they know there are things to work on. They're not expecting you to be brilliant, but they will probably appreciate you admitting them and saying how you're being proactive about them. Like how you are trying to bridge that subject knowledge gap you have, or how you are trying to do more continuous professional development on maybe like behavior management, because that's what you sometimes find tricky. Those kind of things, they can actually work in your favor, because it shows that you're not trying to sugarcoat what you're like as a person. You're being really real with them, but you're also not just accepting it and moving on and pretending they don't exist. You are actively trying to solve those problems. So sometimes just, you know, appreciating and acknowledging those flaws is enough, but also remind yourself that you are more and you deserve more than you give yourself credit for. I mean, how we talk to ourselves is so cliche, but how we talk to ourselves is often not at all how we would talk to others, and we wouldn't even dream of talking to others. Even people we dislike, we wouldn't dream of talking to them the same way that we talk to ourselves. So other people might view us as so much more, you know, competent and capable, having so much more potential than we see ourselves as doing that. So when you're doing a personal statement, something like that, and you have that real case of imposter syndrome, try and just go back to basics, pen to paper, bullet point loads of different things that you have done, that you have had experience with, that you have proven that you have the skills for, things that would make you maybe stand out. And you might be surprised at how much you can actually write and how much you can talk about yourself. And so when you suddenly start to structure this and you base it on obviously the personal or job specification of that school, hopefully that will give you kind of a confidence boost, because honestly there are loads of trainees getting jobs at the moment, and there are some also struggling, and even those that have jobs, they have probably felt imposter syndrome. It's just, what is the difference between maybe those personal statements? Do the people that have received job offers portray themselves slightly differently, because although they have that imposter syndrome, maybe they're projecting it in a different way. Now, if you are struggling with personal statements, be it for applying for teacher training or applying for jobs, then I do offer coaching and editing services for this. What I kind of do as the structure for my coaching is I will look at the job and personal specification. I will talk to you about how you meet each of those points. We will write those down together. We will develop them more and make sure everything is peeled, so you're not just saying, oh, I've had experience planning lessons. Okay, well, that's not enough. You know, everyone has experience with that. We need to delve into it deeper. Let's put examples in there, let's expand, let's link it to the values and the ethos of the school, etc, etc. And then by the end, we basically have a lovely outline, a lovely structure to your personal statement that all you have to do is basically transform them into sentences. So if that's something that would interest you, then I will leave my details in the description below. But now let's get on to the next point. Now, linked to personal statements, applying for jobs, things like that, is the feeling of rejection. Now, I am all too familiar with this. I am not one of those people that I've just mentioned that got my first job after training. In fact, I am still, and I will be completely honest with this because you guys could probably put 2 and 2 together just from looking at the content on my channel, I have yet to secure a permanent job. I have had jobs, they have always been temporary or long-term supplies or maternity covers. I have never been able to secure a permanent job. And so rejection is hard, rejection is real, rejection is out there. I'm seeing people that are like, first interview, first job, whoop whoop, and you know, sometimes, again, I'm being honest, I do feel jealous of these people because I think, why are they necessarily better than me? But there are so many factors that come into it. You can't compare yourself like that, and I still do. So when I make these kind of videos, it is a reminder to myself to also, you know, if I make this content, I need to be held accountable for doing it to myself as well. So these are such good reminders to me as well, because we are all human, we all feel rejected, angry, overwhelmed. It is normal, but it's how we can gather those tools to manage it and to kind of move on from it as well, because it is normal to have these feelings, but we don't want it to overpower us. We don't want them to stay long term. So how do you deal with rejection? Well, with rejection, like most emotions, it's important to acknowledge it. Acknowledge that it is there. Acknowledge that you acknowledge that you feel rejected, acknowledge that you feel hurt and sad, and maybe because of that you might feel further discouraged. But it is important to remember that rejection can be a form of redirection. You know that cliche phrase of when one door closes, the other one opens, or the window opens. Ah, I'm so bad. Like, when I try and think of it on the spot, it just doesn't work. But you know exactly the one I mean. I'm sure it's in The Sound of Music as well. Brilliant movie. So yeah, acknowledge that rejection can be redirection. You might have been rejected from one job because actually there is another one in the lineup for you somewhere else, or you were between two jobs, you weren't sure which, you got rejected from the first one, felt disheartened, felt, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get the second one, and the second one was my dream job, how am I going to do it? And actually you got that second one. It can happen. There's also been positions where I've seen that they have asked for experience in multiple schools. So I always saw myself as one of those loyal people who would stay there for 20 years, but actually in those jobs they prefer that I've been to several schools, because once my temporary position ends I need to find another one. They like that because I've experienced more school systems, I've experienced having to build relationships with children from different demographics, etc. So rejection can be redirection, and sometimes rather than let it consume you, that can be the kind of message that you can keep repeating to yourself over and over again that kind of keeps you motivated, keeps you going. But by all means, you know, from rejection, I often feel anger afterwards. So then you would think about how I'm going to respond rationally rather than react. And so you can go through all of these different emotions that I have spoken about and I'm going to continue to talk about, and try and mesh these together so that you have kind of an emotional action plan for when you feel these emotions, to make sure that you can regulate yourself and come back to a state where you are happy, you have peace of mind, you can feel calm, relaxed, and just continue with your day rather than let it all consume you. The last emotion I'm going to feel well, I feel so many. The last emotion I'm going to talk about today is overwhelm. You know, mega stress. This can happen so often in teaching. There are times of the year which are more stressful than others, especially if you have assignments or reports or parents' evening, all of these kind of extra roles that just kind of pile on top of you all at once for some reason. How to deal with it? How do I self-regulate when I am feeling severe overwhelm or just burnout and stress? And this is to make achievement lists. I refuse to call them to-do lists. I've been saying this for years. They are not to-do lists, because to-do lists implies that no matter how many you've ticked off, if there's still things that aren't ticked off, you still have to do them. And then when you feel like you have to do them, there is that feeling of, you know, failure if you don't get them all done in a day. There is kind of this pressure that you might put on yourself to get them done by the end of the day, otherwise you're going to have more to add. And there's always stress. Like, a to-do list somehow makes you more stressed, whereas when you write it as an achievement list, sorry I'm speaking really loudly and quickly because I'm really passionate about this, when you call it an achievement list, you are celebrating what you have done. So if you've got 5 things on your list, you've done 3 of them. I have achieved 3 things today. Like, how amazing is that? It doesn't matter about the other 2. I haven't achieved them yet, but I will achieve them. Whereas on the to-do, it's I have to do them. Like, it's literally in the name, to do. Whereas an achievement, you can be like, wow, I've actually achieved so much. I had 20 things on my list. I've done 10 of them. That's incredible. Especially in a profession like teaching where your achievement list never ends. Stop beating yourself up on it. There will be things that just aren't as important, that aren't a priority, that aren't a must do by tomorrow. So give yourself some, you know, a break. Give yourself a break. Forgive yourself. And so when you are trying to self-regulate from overwhelm, it is easy to see this, what people often call a to-do list, and freak out and be like, how am I meant to do it all? Oh my gosh, I'm panicking, there's not enough hours in a day. So write down the tasks that are of high importance, that are a priority, that maybe are due the next day or in the next 2 days, but you don't want to work on a Saturday, so you have to get it done by Friday. All those kind of things, and then focus on one of them at a time, you know, in accordance to importance, and then that will allow your mind to focus on one thing, forget about all the rest surrounding it, and just focus your time on that one. Focus your energy on that. There's no point focusing your energy on 10 things when you're trying to attempt one, because then your mind is focused on those other 9. They're like, when am I going to get this one done? Or this one needs me to do this. Or I need to send an email for this one. No, you're focusing on this task. This task is the important one. This is the one due for tomorrow. Don't worry about those others for now. They can wait. And so for Overwhelm, prioritizing is super, super important. When you're a trainee in ECT and just normal qualified teacher, I guess, you can also think about certain jobs from your list that could potentially be done by a support staff if you have one in your classroom. So a lot of the times it's things that just have to be done, but they are things that you could delegate as well. Obviously, make sure that their workload isn't suddenly enormous, because you don't want that, and that's not good for your, you know, teacher-TA relationship. But it's definitely something you can consider as well. So I hope that this video was useful. Please give it a like, share it, and subscribe if you did. Also, don't forget to check out my personal statement coaching and editing details in the description below. If this is, you know, a position that you're in where you're finding it difficult to deal with rejection, or, you know, you've got insecurities from imposter syndrome, etc. And then I will see you soon for the next video. Bye!